Vivian Kane didn't move, not when the flight attendant shouted, not when the supervisor leaned in to join. 2 fingers, 1 target, her. "Take it off, or you're off this plane." She stayed still, hat on, arms folded. The red cap said more than she did. "Make America great again." But her eyes didn't speak of politics. They spoke of patience. 2 rows back, someone hit record, quietly. They thought she was cornered, but she had already picked the room, and she was waiting for the right door to close. I've never seen someone look so calm while everyone else looked scared for them. She didn't fly often anymore, only when it mattered. That morning, she booked the ticket herself. No assistant, no upgrade, just seat 14C, coach, by the window. Vivian Kane hadn't always been quiet. There was a time, years back, when she spoke for a living, courtrooms, depositions, closed-door boardrooms where men twice her size tried to talk over her. They never did it twice. She didn't win by raising her voice. She won by letting them finish first. By the time they paused to breathe, she already had the trap built, and they were already standing in it. They called her the Iron Pause. Clients said her silence could discredit an entire testimony. She never interrupted, just waited until the other person proved her point for her. After 30 years in federal litigation and 7 on the compliance board of Redstone Holdings, she retired, mostly. She stayed on as a strategic advisor, 1 meeting a quarter, no press, no title. But her name still signed off on policies no one else dared rewrite. She'd outlived noise, outlasted noise. So, when a 26-year-old flight attendant tried to scold her like a child, she didn't react. Because she'd seen that kind of power before, raw, loud, new. And she knew what it looked like just before it collapsed. She didn't fly to be right. She flew to observe how right could be trampled. And when the shouting started 3 rows up, she didn't flinch. She just adjusted the sleeve on her blazer, checked her watch, and made a small mental note. It wasn't personal, not yet. Vivian knew how rules worked. She also knew how people used rules when they had nothing else to stand on. The girl shouting didn't know who she was talking to. The woman standing beside her didn't care. That part, that stung a little. Vivian didn't show it, but the thing about being overlooked long enough is that eventually people stop looking altogether. And that's when you move, not loud, not soon, just when it counts. Vivian had picked her seat for a reason. She had a file in her bag no one had seen yet, and a name they didn't recognize on paper, but would soon remember by tone. The cart stopped 3 rows back, then rolled forward, a pause, too long to be routine. The flight attendant didn't smile this time, didn't even pretend. Her name tag read Amber. She looked sharp, tight bun, pressed uniform, lips drawn tight like someone rehearsing control in the mirror. She didn't speak at first, just stared at the hat, not the woman. Then, "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to remove that." No greeting, no option, just order, like Vivian was part of the trash run. Vivian didn't answer, didn't blink, only turned her eyes, slowly, toward Amber. Not defensive, not aggressive, just aware. That was enough to trigger the next move. Amber's voice got louder, her body leaned in, like proximity could make her more right. "Passengers have expressed discomfort. The hat is political. It violates our neutrality policy." Passengers, plural. Though no one had said a word, no one even looked up. Vivian waited, counted 3 seconds, 4, then turned back toward the window. Dismissal. Quiet, final. That's when Karen appeared. Supervisor badge, clipboard, HOA energy in a jetliner. She didn't ask questions, didn't introduce herself, just stood like a monument built out of indignation and Delta miles. "I'm the supervisor on this flight. If you don't comply, we'll escort you off." That word, escort, hung in the air like smoke, fake polite, fully loaded. Vivian looked down, folded her hands, then raised her gaze, not to Amber, not to Karen, to the empty seat across the aisle, like she was imagining someone else there, someone who'd seen this play out before. The tension wasn't in her voice. There was no voice. But every move Amber made now, every syllable Karen added, was tightening the rope. They weren't enforcing policy. They were performing authority. And the show was getting sloppy. Vivian didn't protest, didn't reach for her rights. She just shifted her bag to her lap, zipped it calmly, and stood. Not like someone defeated, but like someone clearing the stage. They thought it was over. They had no idea. The first cue had just been given. Sometimes the loudest person in the room isn't the one in control. Maybe you've seen it before, someone overstepping and no one saying a word. If stories like this make you pause, think, and want to see how it ends the right way, you're in the right place. Subscribe, stay sharp, and drop a comment if you've ever watched it unfold and thought, this isn't done yet. She didn't argue, didn't plead, didn't even ask why. Vivian just stepped aside, like she'd forgotten something at home and would be back by noon. Amber turned to the other crew member and whispered, "Crisis handled." Karen nodded, arms crossed. The supervisor pose, proud, permanent, unearned. A few rows back, someone lowered their phone, quietly. No one clapped, no one asked questions, just silence. And that silence felt a little too easy. Vivian walked toward the front, not fast, not slow, measured. Halfway up the aisle, she stopped. There was a child in seat 6A, maybe 10, quiet, staring. Vivian leaned down and handed her something. A small white card, no logo on the front, no instructions. The girl looked at it, flipped it once. On the back, in small black print, property of Redstone Holdings, Flight Compliance Division, internal use. Only. She didn't say a word, just patted the child gently on the shoulder and kept walking. The girl's father glanced at the card, then at Vivian, then tucked it into his coat pocket without a sound. Karen didn't see it, Amber didn't notice, but the phone from row 23 picked it up briefly. A flash of red hat, a flick of the wrist, a card-changing hands. And that was enough. By the time Vivian stepped off the plane, the gears were already moving. An auto-forward email pinged the Redstone legal team. A name was flagged, a gate number was logged, and a copy of the incident report with a timestamp was uploaded from her phone. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She raised her record. Outside, she took off the hat, folded it once, and placed it in her bag. Not because she was done, because the hat had done its job. It had drawn the lines, let them color outside them. Inside the cabin, Amber laughed, light, relieved. She leaned against the wall near the service galley. "This is why we train for these things," she said to another attendant. Karen was already filling out the in-flight compliance log. Check marks, official tone, the kind of authority that disappears once you're off the aircraft. None of them noticed the maintenance crew entering the cockpit, or the quiet exchange between ground control and the compliance office, because they thought this was over. Vivian knew better. She had left quietly, but the law had stayed seated. Row 4C, watching, waiting, documented. It started with a screenshot, then a clip, then 3 more. By the time the plane touched down, the group chat had already exploded. Not public, not viral, just inside, crew only, shift specific. One image showed Vivian standing silently. Another caught Karen mid-yell, arm raised. A third, Amber, finger out, expression tight, body language unmistakably aggressive. All time-stamped, all from different angles. Someone on the crew had shared it as a heads up. But screenshots have a life of their own. Within the hour, the footage made its way to the internal ethics channel, then to someone in HR, then to someone above HR. And that's when the air shifted. A clip surfaced next, short, under 15 seconds. Karen's voice, clear, commanding. "This airline stands for dignity, and we decide what that means." The problem? She was saying it while standing over a silent passenger. A passenger who was neither disruptive nor in violation of any written policy. Someone added subtitles. Someone slowed the audio. Someone zoomed in on Amber's eyes when Vivian stood and walked away. Anne caught the flicker of doubt. Vivian didn't share any of it. She didn't have to. The law would handle the policy. The people would handle the tone. By 6 p.m., the first email came through. Subject line, Flight 1076, Passenger Conduct Review Request. It didn't go to Vivian, it went to the CEO's desk, and that's when names started surfacing. Full names, Amber Reese, Karen Holloway. No longer just the flight crew. Now, defendants in review, Someone tried to defend them. Posted, passengers were offended by the hat. But that comment died quickly because someone replied with a new screenshot. Vivian, seated, saying nothing. Amber, shouting. Karen, glaring. Another message followed, this time from an anonymous internal account. What part of equal treatment allows this? That's when Vivian's voice finally appeared. Not on camera, not through lawyers. Just 6 quiet words typed beneath the thread. I thought we were still flying under the First Amendment. Pinned, upvoted, no further replies. Amber didn't speak to the press. Karen tried to, but the clip of her yelling played side by side with her past diversity statement from last year's training conference. The irony stung. So did the silence from management. Vivian never raised her voice, never defended herself. She just let the facts walk in before her. And the facts didn't blink. They didn't bend. They didn't shout. They just arrived, on time, in uniform, with every receipt. The meeting room was too quiet, not corporate quiet, waiting for the verdict quiet. Amber stood by the window, arms crossed, back straight. Karen paced behind the conference table, chewing a thumbnail she hadn't touched in years. The regional director hadn't sat down, neither had HR. A screen glowed at the end of the table, paused on a freeze frame. Karen, mid-sentence. Amber, pointing. Vivian, unmoved. No one spoke. Until the door opened. She walked in. Not late, not early, right when it mattered. Vivian didn't need to be introduced, but someone tried anyway. This is... The director cut him off with a glance. Karen turned first, tried to stand taller, tried to look ready. Amber's posture folded before she meant it to. Vivian didn't raise her voice. She didn't sit. She placed a single folder on the table, then looked at Karen. Do you feel entitled to define dignity for others? Karen blinked, twice. Then, I was upholding policy. Vivian's head tilted, barely. You wrote that policy? No, but I implemented it in your own words during a recorded confrontation with a compliant passenger. Karen looked at the screen, the video unpaused. Her voice rang out again. We decide what dignity means. Silence. Vivian turned to Amber. Her tone didn't change. Did you ever ask me why I wore the hat? Amber shook her head, swallowed. No. Did you ask if I was disturbing anyone? No. Vivian didn't blink. She looked around the room. No further questions. Then she sat. One by one, the eyes turned away from Karen, from Amber. No one defended them now. The regional director leaned forward, cleared his throat. We were unaware of your current title within Redstone, Ms. Kane. Vivian didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She simply opened the folder. Inside, an annotated report. Passenger policies, legal precedents, flight footage logs, everything color-coded, everything time-stamped. You were never supposed to see this, HR whispered. Vivian replied without looking up. I was always supposed to see it. I just waited for the right version. Amber tried to speak. No one was trying to... Vivian raised her hand. Amber stopped. You judge me by my hat, she said softly. But now you know, I don't wear anything I can't defend. And that was it. No shouting, no punishment declared. But the collapse was complete. The only sound left was a chair creaking as Karen sat down and realized she wasn't standing on policy. She was standing on someone else's patience. And it just ran out. The next flight boarded without incident, same gate, same route. But something had shifted. Seat 14C was now unassigned, not blocked, just missing from the manifest. Like it had never existed. Amber wasn't on the crew list. Karen's name didn't show up either. A new supervisor stood at the gate, smiling too much, avoiding all eye contact. Vivian didn't fly that day. She didn't need to. Instead, she sat in a small office at the top floor of Redstone's West Terminal. Curtains open, skyline gray. Nothing on the desk, but a closed laptop and a red cap. It sat centered, clean, unfolded. No one dared touch it. Outside the door, 2 junior associates passed by, whispering. They paused, glanced at the glass, then moved on. She didn't look up, just ran her finger once along the brim of the hat, then let it go. Downstairs, a quiet update went out to all staff. A revised code of conduct, a new phrasing for passenger attire. The phrase disruption by symbolism was gone. No one announced the change, no memo thread. But those who had been watching noticed. Later that week, someone left a small envelope at Vivian's door. No return name, just a card inside, white, typed. Thank you for staying seated when it mattered. She didn't reply, didn't need to. Some stories don't ask for applause, they just wait to be understood. At 7:10 p.m., as the lights dimmed across the tarmac, Vivian turned off the lamp, slid the red cap into the drawer, closed it. And for the first time that week, no one followed her out of the building, but someone watched from across the lot as she walked toward her car. No security, no assistant, just a woman who once said nothing so the truth could say everything. And behind her, the empty seat remained, unassigned, unforgotten, still holding the shape of someone who refused to be moved. A chair doesn't have to be occupied to remind people who once sat in it. Sometimes, just the shape it leaves behind is enough. Vivian never asked for an apology. She never needed one. Some people speak, others wait. The wise do both, just not at the same time. Justice doesn't always arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it enters through a side door, wearing reading glasses, carrying a folder no one asked to see. Power isn't loud, it's steady. It knows what it's worth, and it never rushes. Old objects remember. A folded hat, a nameplate in a drawer, an empty row no one reassigns. And dignity? It's not what others let you keep, it's what they can't take even when they try. Some things are not lost in conflict. They're revealed by it. Not everyone needs to win. Some just make sure the game never forgets who was watching. There are rooms where silence holds more weight than any verdict. And there are people who never raise their voice, because they already know which door everyone else will have to walk through.